Hi, Photobug fans. We want to talk a little bit more with Jim Swallow here about the state of photography or the future of photography, as we were talking in the podcast. And Jim had some very interesting insights on photography as a profession and the gender base of it.
Yeah, so this is an extension to the podcast conversation, and had to do with your perceived notion that women seem to be doing better as professional photographers now, especially younger women.
Yes.
So talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, I see most of the successful photographers that are out there today, the ones that are trying to make a living or doing somewhat of a living, are female photographers. Late 20s, early 30s, women with a child or children. Because nowadays when a woman wants to hire a family portrait photographer, they want to find a woman that they can relate to. Well, the first thing that you find a photographer who has a child the same age as your child, suddenly there's that instant bond between photographer and the mom, so they instantly make a connection. Most women photographers out there today have little technical skill, but they have a lot of creativity. So where they lack in all the technical mumbo jumbo, they excel in the creativity of things. But a lot of times when you look at the pictures, they're not technically correct, but people are buying the pictures.
But they like the aesthetics.
They like the aesthetics of it. In today's world, people are throwing the technique out the door and getting more candid and the aesthetic look of a photograph just because it looks good. And I find that too many portraits are being over photoshopped. Before, the studio photographer forever, for 100 years didn't have Photoshop, where they
and very limited
darkroom,
dodging burning,
and when you retouched things, you really retouched the negative. Then you made a print, and then you did dyes,
or had somebody hand painted or something.
Right, and you used different things to enhance a photograph, and it looked like a piece of art. Today, it's just easy to just stick it in Photoshop and fix all your errors in Photoshop, but you need to learn how to take better pictures to start with.
Attempt to fix your errors. Sometimes you create more problems than you fix.
But there's so many women photographers out there, and a lot of them have husbands that have a job, so they are not
stay-at-home moms.
They're not creating the income for both them and their spouse and their children. It's an added income to the family as opposed to the primary income for the family.
Do you see this extending also into wedding photography? Would a bride feel more akin?
I do. Brides feel more comfortable with a female photographer, and most male photographers now are going out and shooting with a second photographer who's a female. So you can get into where the ladies are getting dressed. You have that instant bond again.
You see, for the short time that Fred and I did weddings, I had asked Fred to put on a wig and a skirt, but he refused.
The beard.
He also had to shave the beard.
The beard,
I said you would make a better looking girl than I would. So
well, that's pretty sad.
When you got a little bit of the beard going on, it's kind of hard to.
I said that's all right. I'll just go with the groom's party, and
I've got a beard. I'm wearing it on the inside.
So,
but
I got a partial beard.
Through the 80s and the 90s, I photographed pretty close to 600 weddings. And many families that when I did one for the family, I did 2 and 3 for the family, because they respected what I was doing, and they
and probably come back for the family portraits.
And the kids and all that stuff, and it's developing a relationship over the years.
And now you're saying that because more photographers are either using a woman or I won't say it that way. They have a woman photographer on staff that does a lot of the primary work of the wedding, or that is the owner-operator.
Right.
That they are able to build kind of a bond with
the bride.
The bride
and the bride's family.
But it's a bond of more of a personal level, not so much of as a professional.
Right. as a personal level. They're getting that connection, and
Right.
they're developing the relationships. You know, in today's business world, it's all about a relationship. But I don't see a lot of relational business going on. I don't see that business, you know, the long-term relationship.
People don't have that loyalty to.
They don't have that loyalty anymore.
So even after the bond is made with that one photographer, you're saying that the chances of them getting repeat business are much less than they used to be, or?
They're less than they used to be, yeah. So
Okay.
it's hard to tell, because when I first moved into the Tampa Bay area, there were approximately 50 studio photographers in the Tampa Bay area that had occupational licenses, sales tax numbers, and they were legitimate business studios, and they were right around 50. One of my friends was telling me that in 2011 or 2012, there were 500 photographers with occupational licenses and sales tax numbers. So we went from 50 to 500 in a less than a 10-year span. So the piece of the pie got really, really small.
Yeah.
Whereas the 50 photographers back in 1999 were barely scraping by to make a living. With 50 of them, now there's 500 of them, so their piece of the pie just got diminished so much that you don't have that relationship, because now it's, oh, I'll just go to another photographer.
So there's still a lot of people trying to make a go
They're
at it.
trying, right.
And how long do you think that their average is? Because they say that small businesses that are startups usually average 2 years and then that's it. What do you think is happening with?
I think the same thing's going to happen with photography. I see that people are going to last 2 or 3 years, and they're going to realize that, oh, we're just not making enough money to pay the bills.
Well, folks, we hope that we have struck a chord, either that you agree with us, or some of you may be saying, no, you're totally wrong, you have it completely wrong. And especially if you're doing photography professionally, post to the site. Give us your take on it. Give us your ideas or what you think. If you disagree completely, post it. We can take it. Or if you
Sure.
agree, why do you agree? We
Well,
would love to have
I
your
think it's a
comments.
conversation worth
Yeah.
having, and I think would love to have other people's input into it too. And,
Sure.
I do agree with Jim. I've seen it for myself, so at least you and I are in agreement.
I hope it turns around, and I hope the average consumer starts developing a relationship with their photographer and keeps the business going. I don't want to see the business go away. I don't want to see the profession in the direction it's going. You know, a lot of times photographers they sit there, and they don't understand the history of photography, where photojournalism came from, where, you know, the photojournalistic style to weddings and portraits. If you don't understand the history, you're not going to understand where it's going. If you know, it's like some people today have no idea who Rocky Gunn is. And in the wedding world, Rocky Gunn was the first person to do that journalistic style of wedding photography. And this was back in the early 80s. Now, if you understand where it came from, you can build on that. Instead, they just go out there. A lot of
camera.
I have a camera, take a picture. And then the websites that all advertise, I believe in natural light photography, available light photography.
Set it on program mode and let the camera do the work.
But they don't understand light. They don't understand where it's going, where it's coming from, and
Or
how
why.
to manipulate, or why,
How it reacts with surfaces.
and how to manipulate it. If you want to be successful in business, you've got to understand everything from the history of photography to
as well as the business side
as the
itself.
business.
Yeah, most photographers usually are bad business people too, because they don't have that business background or training. So
Right. You got to be a good business person and a good marketing person first, and a photographer second.
So yeah, we'd love to hear from you all, see what you think, and hopefully we can continue this conversation.
Let's hope so.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All righty.
And more on our podcast if you want an extended conversation of this, which this is a part of the podcast, which is podcast number 77 of the Fotobug.